The Trump administration is waking up to the fact that America's long-term partner in Syria, the Syrian Kurds, and particularly the SDF fighters, are under siege from America's newest ally, the government of Syria. Syrian interim President Sharaz forces moved quickly last week to take territory in northeast Syria that has been controlled by the Kurds for years. This is upsetting a balance that the U.S. depended upon to defeat ISIS. In fact, special forces are still working with the Syrian Kurds, but the latest developments are putting that relationship in danger. For instance, the U.S. has depended upon Kurdish fighters to ensure that the thousands of ISIS fighters who were captured remained in prison. But numerous reports this week suggest many ISIS fighters have now escaped from one of the prisons because the Kurdish fighters were forced to leave. Syrian Kurdish forces say as many as 1,500 ISIS fighters actually escaped. The Syrian government estimates it's closer to 100. Even 100 fighters, if still radicalized, could present worst-case scenarios for U.S. security interests and for the American forces who've worked so hard to ensure the Syrian Kurdish forces were sufficiently equipped to prevent a prison escape. U.S. trust in Sharia included trusting something like this would not happen. The recent events also call into question one of the principal bases for U.S. support for the new Syrian government, which was Sharia's promise that he would form an inclusive government that protected minority rights. If the Kurds are now being attacked, then what confidence can the Druze, Alawites, and Christians have that they won't be subject to violence and marginalization? The U.S. just removed sanctions on Syria by rescinding the Caesar Act at the end of 2025. Could these new developments lead to reinstituting U.S. sanctions? Some members of Congress say so. For instance, Senator Lindsey Graham promised to institute what he called bone-crushing sanctions if Sharia's forces don't halt their attacks on the Kurds. Whether he could succeed in doing that would depend on whether he gets enough bipartisan support in Congress, and probably will require that Trump does not oppose it. It would be a big setback for the Trump administration, which is hoping the lifting of sanctions would result in new investment in Syria and spark the beginning of the reconstruction of the country and the renewal of its economy. Syria's future hangs in the balance.